I guess just switching text, we're talking about the AML compliance officer here a little bit. Obviously, they've brought in some new rules around fit and proper, what that means for a compliance officer. One thing really stood out to me that I'd love to chat with you about. They've got this sort of section that's like, they can't have a conflict of interest within the firm. Now, that obviously is going to be very, very hard for a lot of small entities or even large entities to comply with. What was your sort of read on that conflict of interest piece?
I like it, right? So
Mm.
What the fit and proper test also includes the uh, ability of the AML code to actually do the job, which has never been an inherent requirement
Great.
of appointing someone before. So I'll just start from that. I think it makes sense. I know it's more paperwork for everyone to do these fit and proper tests, which are already required under other regimes, whether you're in finance or whether you're a lawyer, for instance, you have to have that integrity and pass all of those checks. However, I like it because it's at least for the first time, actual skill is part of this assessment. In terms of your question, that is a very interesting part of it. And I would say no. I don't think
Mm.
that, especially for smaller firms, the intention of the regulation isn't to make it unfeasible for you to operate your business. And it's not ever going to be possible to say, well, the AML compliance officer cannot have competing obligations or conflicts of interest. I think they can't have unacceptable conflicts of interest, right? So the way I think of this is you can have someone like a partner, for instance, is very invested in seamless onboarding, growing the business. That doesn't mean that they cannot be the AML compliance officer and juggle that, like wear different hats and sort of advocate for staunch compliance with the AML regime and doing what's right under that. I always sort of come back to this idea, and I've had to revert to this from self-defense really
Yeah.
over my career is like I'm on the same side as the business
Mm.
when I'm the AML compliance officer by default, and I have a vested interest, even if I don't care about anything except for AML because I'm a nerd that has t-shirts and badges. And it's true, I'm a bit of a one-track pony, but I'm invested already in the in my employer doing well because they pay my salary. So we can't
Yes.
but comply and be like gold standard and everything and never onboard anyone unless we've got a litmus test and a DNA, sample and all of this stuff. Because then we won't onboard anyone and my salary ceases to be able to be paid because that's also paid as a business expense from the business doing well. So that's my take on it. What do you think? I think it's like you just have to document how you get to saying they're appropriate. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, my thoughts on that is like the number one thing is the it has to be a high enough position where the person feels comfortable saying no. So a lot of the time that does sit with, a law firm partner and a real estate agency, potentially the owner or the COO or something like that. They have to have that ability to say no because I mean, we've seen it, and probably I've seen it over the last 8 years. There's always people that try and bully their way through an AML process, and they put a tremendous amount of pressure on the AMLCO. So, in fact, it's almost, in my opinion, better if it's a partner that is,
Totally.
in the law firm context, an AMLCO because they see both sides of that coin. So they have the power to actually say no because yeah, law firms is it's really tricky if you're the non if you're a non-fee earner, it's really hard. It's really hard because the fee earners own the business. And they also make the money, but they don't kind of operate the business all the time, especially in the larger end of town. So I think yeah, having a fee earner with that vested interest, they have the ability to actually go, actually, this doesn't quite look right, or you need to get some more information.
Mm.
I wouldn't suggest that they would be doing the operationalization of something like this. Maybe you have a head of compliance, something like that in there. But the buck has to stop somewhere, and in my opinion, it's got to be with someone with stopping power.
Yeah,
As the yeah.
I agree completely. And I think that on it's the exact same point looked at from the other angle is the worst compliance people I've ever worked with in my career are the people that don't take into account the business needs. And so
Mm.
bad compliance will be like, oh no, it doesn't matter. Don't trust e-verification. Everyone has to come in. That's, maybe okay, sure, maybe. That'll work for some businesses. But if that's if that's not your business driving that decision for your customers and what growth looks like for you, and that's like compliance actually driving that business process, that's dumb. Like that's where
Yeah, yeah,
compliance officers need to have the business perspective as well. I think it's we're saying the same thing, but I think it goes both ways.
totally.
You have to be able to say no,
Yeah,
um, but you also have to want to say yes where you can and have that
yeah,
right for the balance of
yeah.
it.
Having an inflexible
Mhm.
program is the best way to get the entire firm to hate you,
Yeah.
basically. And then that makes your job tremendously even more hard. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
But saying no is a great point too. The best, just if I may, very quickly,
Yeah,
the
sure.
best email I've ever received, I won't say where, but the best email I've ever received in my career was a salesperson wanting to onboard a high-risk customer. And they'd done the due diligence. They've never done due diligence before, so I don't know what they thought they were doing. But they sent it to me and said, like, if we don't get a response by end of day, we'll assume that this is approved. I was like, oh, that's very much not how this works.
Oh,
So, there's bullish people on both sides. Having someone that sits across that is super useful.
yeah, yeah. And I can tell you some of the funniest stories of compliance officers that got appointed in tranche two in New Zealand. I think there was a big firm. I won't say what industry, but they appointed two grads to sort of run their entire AML program. So they were just out of uni and they were like, "What the heck is this?" And they just got absolutely pumped for about 6 months
No longer
before they
really.
both ended up leaving.
That's
Well,
great, right? You need the adequate skills and expertise now under the fit and proper person test. I'd love to see them jump through that hoop now.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.